I was blacklisted from the legal industry and stayed idle at home. My wife not only didn't despise me, but encouraged me to be a full-time dad, saying she would support the family from now on. I was touched, but how could I bear to place all the family burden on her while she was pregnant? I secretly went to interviews behind her back, but at one company, I unexpectedly saw her with her pregnant belly, nestled in another man's arms acting coy. The interviewer warned me, "Don't look, that's the CEO and his wife." I froze in place, but after coming to my senses, my first reaction was self-blame. She must have been under financial pressure to submit to someone else. I was too incompetent. I found this so-called CEO, hoping he would take the initiative to draw clear boundaries with my wife. Unexpectedly, this scene was caught by my wife. She completely changed from her gentle and elegant demeanor in front of me and cursed at me. "You don't think the child is yours, do you? I'm about to marry into a wealthy family. How could I possibly have a child with a kept man like you?" As it turns out, she just wanted me to be her free nanny, dedicating myself to taking care of her and someone else's child. Disheartened, I left behind divorce papers and departed alone. On the road, I received a call from a female boss. She said, "Be my son's child companion, 100,000 per month." I went, only to discover that the female boss was actually the CEO's fiancée. "I'm sorry, you might not be suitable for this position." These expected words still made me feel uncontrollably disappointed once again. Job hunting for a year. I've heard this phrase too many times, but this rejection hit harder than usual. Because this time, the interviewer was my junior from graduate school. Back then, I was his team leader. Now, he's 3 years younger than me, but has become the department manager who can decide my fate. Perhaps seeing how dejected I was, he followed me out and advised kindly, "Senior, have you considered working in a different city?" I caught his implication and asked, "What's wrong?" He pulled me aside and whispered, "Actually, your resume is the most impressive among all the applicants in this batch, but management has explicitly forbidden us from hiring you. Did you offend someone?" These words hit me like a thunderbolt, leaving me frozen in place. No wonder, despite my self-proclaimed exceptional abilities, I had been unable to find a job for an entire year. I suppressed my confusion and shock, turning to thank him for telling me this, when I spotted a familiar figure at the entrance. "Why is my wife here?" "Hi, Shwe." I called softly, but my junior colleague tapped me on the shoulder. "Don't stare, that's our CEO's wife." "That's impossible, she's my—" Before the words "wife" could leave my mouth, I saw her cradling her slightly bulging belly as she nestled in. Oh, the arms of the man who had just walked in. "Ingja, won't you carry me? I'm pregnant and so tired." That smiling gaze, that coquettish voice. I had never seen or heard her like this before. What was even harder for me to accept was that the person she was being coquettish with was none other than Ingja Chu, the primary culprit in the last case I handled when I was a judge. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was the reason I lost my job, yet now my wife was nestled in his arms, smiling sweetly. I staggered slightly, my hands clenching involuntarily at my sides. Before I could step forward, Chu Ingja had already publicly swept Han Haishue into his arms and strode toward the elevator. Such a blatant display of affection would make anyone call them the perfect couple. But he was carrying my wife. The distance from the entrance to the elevator wasn't short. I had multiple opportunities to call out to them. But though my hand rose several times, it ultimately fell back down. I looked at the rejected resume in my hand, my heart sinking. For the past year, she had been supporting all our household expenses by herself, which must have put her under tremendous pressure. If it weren't for me, she probably wouldn't have had to give herself to someone else. In the end, it was my failure. On my way home, my mind was wandering in countless directions, and without paying attention, I got on the wrong bus. By the time I got back on track, it was already evening when I arrived home. I calculated Han Haishue's time off work and thought to myself, this is bad. Afraid I wouldn't have time to prepare dinner for her. I quickened my pace toward the residential complex, but unexpectedly, from a distance, I spotted a luxury car parked at the entrance. That car looked very familiar. I had just seen it outside the company after my interview today. I gathered my courage and moved a few steps closer, only to clearly see my wife and Chu Ingja passionately kissing. The carefully prepared resume in my hand was crumpled as my anger built up in my chest. I finally couldn't bear it anymore and recklessly rushed toward the luxury car. But I had barely taken 2 steps when I was stopped by the elderly lady from downstairs. "Little phone, at this hour, why aren't you at home preparing dinner for your Haishua? What are you wandering around outside for?" I lived in a house left to me by my parents, and basically everyone in the neighborhood knew me. Many people gossiped about me for not working, but having heard it so often, I had gotten used to it. This old lady was just a bit impolite with her words, but wasn't a bad person. "I have something to do." I politely nodded to her and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, the next second, a soft arm slipped through mine. "Annie, my husband can do whatever he wants. Since when is it your place to interfere?" Turning my head, I faced Han Haishua. Her sharp gaze swept over the old lady, who clicked her tongue and left, no longer pushing her luck. This wasn't the first time she had stood up for me. During my year of unemployment, she had shielded me from many rumors. I had countless times felt grateful for her loyalty and silently vowed to treat her well for the rest of my life. In these times when they say love pursues material interests, I thought I had found the exception. But looking at the slightly smudged lipstick at the corner of her mouth, I only felt irony. She took my arm as we walked home and casually probed, "Honey, why did you go downstairs so late?" I hid the resume behind my back and slapped my forehead, pretending. "I saw a soup-making video and wanted to buy a chicken to make something nutritious for you." Hearing this, the last trace of worry in her eyes disappeared, and she swung my arm playfully. I knew it. My husband cares for me the most. As she spoke, she pulled out 2 medical reports from her bag to show me, her voice soft. "Just to update you, I suddenly started bleeding at work today. I didn't want to worry you, so I went for a checkup myself. But the doctor said our baby is very healthy." At the end, she playfully winked at me, looking at how cheerful and adorable she appeared, then glancing at her slightly swollen belly. I couldn't help wondering, which one is the real her? Holding the medical reports, I thought back to our first child. When I lost my job, our child was only 4 months along. She worried herself sick because of me, and eventually, the baby stopped developing in her womb. At 4 months, the baby already had distinct facial features, so induced labor was the only option. The night she had the procedure, I leaned against the hospital wall, the tiles cold to the bone. At that moment, I swore if we ever had another child, I would take good care of her. I never expected the child would come much sooner than we imagined. Even though we took precautions every time, the baby still arrived unexpectedly. The doctor said her body hadn't fully recovered yet, and this pregnancy would be difficult, but she still insisted on keeping the baby. She said, "This is our little one. No matter how much suffering it brings, I want to keep him." Memories of our sweet past slid before me frame by frame like a movie, gradually covering the shock of what I had witnessed today. We once loved each other passionately. I think she just accidentally strayed from the path. As her husband, I should guide her back to the right way. I went to some effort to obtain Chu Ing's schedule, planning to have a conversation with him. In the coffee shop, he was sitting across from a woman holding a child. I didn't intend to eavesdrop on their conversation, but the tables in the coffee shop weren't far apart. At first, hearing his flattering tone, I thought the woman was his client. When they discussed wedding arrangements, I realized that sitting across from him was apparently his fiancée, named Xiaolan. The Xia family, one of the wealthiest and most prestigious in the capital. I'd heard that 2 years ago, when the Xia family's only daughter returned from studying abroad, she was already pregnant, and the child's father remains unknown to this day. Although Xiaolan already has a son, with this marriage, it's clear who's trying to curry favor with whom. So, Chu Ingzhe is not single, and moreover, he's obsequious to his fiancée. This information would be very advantageous for future negotiations. As I was calculating my negotiation leverage in my mind, suddenly, a child's crying came from behind me. I turned my head to look. Xiaolan was frantically taking out a bottle to comfort the child, but there was no sign of improvement. The gaze of the entire cafe turned in our direction, and some customers were already expressing their displeasure in low murmurs. Since Han Haishua had experienced a miscarriage before, I was extremely attentive to her current pregnancy. From the moment we confirmed the pregnancy, I began reading relevant books. I could immediately tell that the child was suffering from gas, not hunger. The child cried so pitifully that I finally couldn't bear it and stepped forward. I explained the situation to Xiaolan and took the child from her arms, holding him upright and gently patting his back. The child quickly calmed down in my arms, but when I handed him back to Xiaolan, he suddenly bent over and vomited. Although I dodged in time, my sleeve was inevitably stained with some filth. When I returned from the restroom after dealing with it, only Chu Ingzhe remained at the coffee table. From a distance, he raised his coffee cup toward me, clearly waiting for me. "Judge Feng, long time no see." I felt there was no need for small talk between us, so I went straight to the point. "I don't care if you're doing this to get revenge on me or for whatever other reason. I'm asking you to stay away from my wife from now on." "Oh." His eyebrows slightly raised. "How do you know your wife wasn't the one who came to me?" After an affair is exposed, men often shift their wrongdoings onto women's seduction. Though I knew this was a common tactic used by men, I still couldn't control my pupils from suddenly contracting. I took a deep breath and said, word by word, "Regarding the matter between you two, does Miss Xiaolan not care either?" "Of course she cares," he said this. Yet his smile remained unchanged, with the appearance of someone in complete control. "But Han Haishua cheated. Don't you care about that?" "I can forgive her this once," I said with difficulty. He let out a cold sneer, and though he didn't speak, I felt at that moment all my self-respect was being trampled under his foot. "She's pregnant with our child." My fingers kept "Are you Bing the wedding ring on my ring finger, repeating constantly, "Yes, she's pregnant with our child." Hearing this, the mockery on his face grew even stronger. What if I told you that the child in her belly is mine? A loud ding rang in my mind like an alarm bell. That's right, we had always been using protection, but I still reflexively denied it. No, that's impossible. Seeing me at a loss for words, the curve of his lips grew wider. While enjoying my reaction, he threw out more bombshells one after another. You can't accept this. Then do you know that the child you two had before, she deliberately got rid of it? Your job, she's the one who reported you and got you fired. The reason you're blacklisted in the industry is because she said you're attentive when taking care of people, and she wasn't comfortable with others taking care of our son. He suddenly stood up, leaned forward, and staring into my eyes, slowly said, "She personally begged me to blacklist you in the industry." I could barely stand, staggering forward. I grabbed his collar, my eyes bulging with rage. "Impossible. You're lying to me." However, he showed no intention of struggling, instead just waving at someone behind me. "Hi, Shua. You finally arrived." Hearing this, I immediately turned around, surprised to see her. But soon, my eyes were pleading, hoping she would tell me that everything Chu Yingzhe just said was false. However, before I could speak, Han Haishua's bag was already striking my body. "Feng Xinian, why aren't you staying at home? Why did you come looking for Yingzhe?" Her bag hit me repeatedly. It hurt, but my heart was thousands of times more painful than my body. Between me and Chu Yingzhe, she chose Chu Yingzhe without any hesitation. I thought that when she learned I had discovered her affair, she would at least beg for my forgiveness. But now it seems I overestimated my position in her heart. She hit me many times, but I still didn't let go of Chu Yingzhe's hand. Her anger escalated, and she slapped me across the face. "Feng Xinian, I'm the one who cheated. If you have the guts, come at me." My cheek was burning. I silently released Chu Yingzhe's collar and looked at my hysterical wife standing before me. I knew at that moment I had completely lost. Chu Yingzhe embraced Han Haishua right in front of me. He whispered intimately in her ear, "Be patient. I'm already preparing our wedding." Han Haishua looked delighted. She immediately touched her belly and raised her head proudly at me. "Since it's come to this, I won't hide it anymore. You don't really think this child is yours, do you? I'm about to marry into wealth. How could I possibly have a child with a man who lives off women like you?" The term "man who lives off women," I had heard it countless times over the past year, but this was the first time I heard it from her mouth. How piercing it was. But all of this was Bika. Use of her, wasn't it? Whispers filled the surroundings. Some people who initially sympathized with me quickly changed their attitude after hearing that I was living off my wife. He looked so decent. How could he let his wife support him? So he's a kept man. No wonder his wife ran off with someone else. Indeed, he deserves it. Feng Xinan looked at me with utter contempt, holding his head high like a victorious rooster. I didn't want to argue anymore, nor was there any point. A woman who didn't have me in her heart wasn't worth keeping anyway. On my way home, I recalled all the moments I had spent with Han Haishua. The more I thought about it, the more suspicious our reunion seemed. Back then, right after graduation, I became a judge in the court. That year, I had just been promoted and was assigned to handle a high-profile economic case in the capital. The Chu Group's case of issuing fake value-added tax invoices to fraudulently claim export tax refunds and deduct tax payments. And Han Haishua suddenly appeared shortly after I took on this case. We were schoolmates who participated in the same club activities, but we never really had any close relationship. She came from a wealthy family and had an outstanding aura. She was practically every male student's goddess at school back then. Although I wasn't exactly infatuated with her, the few interactions we had left me with a decent impression of her. I never expected that after graduation, I would meet her again, and during her time of hardship. She said her family had gone bankrupt, they were deeply in debt, and now she was struggling even to feed herself. Out of our old schoolmate connection, I reached out to help her. As we spent more time together, we developed feelings for each other. After dating for just 1 month, she proposed marriage. I thought it was a bit rushed, but she said she was homeless and hoped I could give her a home. I felt terribly sorry for her and immediately got our marriage certificate with her. 1 month after our marriage, she became pregnant. From being single to becoming an expectant father took only 2 months. Everything happened so quickly, as if someone had calculated each step carefully, waiting for me to fall right into it. At that time, I was so overwhelmed with joy that when she told me the case of the Chu Yingzhe family might be connected to her, I was only stunned for a moment before looking at her belly to comfort her. It's okay. Pregnant women can apply for serving their sentence outside prison. She was very happy that day. At the time, I thought it was because of our child, but thinking about it now, it was just because she avoided imprisonment. That child was nothing more than a tool for her to escape punishment. Later, someone tried to bribe me, hoping that I would be lenient when ruling on Chu Yingzhe's case. I didn't accept and judged according to the law. Boo. As soon as the verdict was announced, someone reported me for abusing my power and protecting my wife. I was suspended pending investigation, while she had a miscarriage during this time. Everything, even though done properly and legally, inevitably raised suspicions. The pressure from public opinion was too great. The case was required to be retried, and I was dismissed from the court. Looking back now, there were holes in her story everywhere from the beginning. If only I hadn't trusted her love so much, I wouldn't have been so thoroughly deceived by her. Even after discovering her affair with Chu Yingzhe, I still thought she was just momentarily confused by her emotions. How ridiculous I was. Since that's how things are, I won't stop her from marrying into wealth, even though this wealthy family already has a fiancé. I called her, wanting to ask when she'd be coming home to discuss divorce arrangements. But when the call connected, no one spoke. Through the receiver came some soft murmuring, and after a moment, I heard her gentle whisper, "Stop it. Be gentle. Don't hurt the baby." I hung up, drafted a divorce agreement, signed it, and left with my belongings. The house was left to me by my parents, but she had lived there, and I didn't want it anymore. I listed it with a real estate agent and sent her a message asking her to move out soon. Then I dragged my suitcase to the airport. Since I've been blacklisted in this city, I decided to start over in a new one. However, as I stood at the airport selecting my destination, I suddenly received a call from an unfamiliar number, with the faint sound of a child crying in the background. "Is this Mr. Foam? I apologize for disturbing you so late, but I happened to come across your resume. Are you looking for work? Would you be interested in becoming my son's child companion? The monthly salary is $100,000. The $100,000 salary far exceeded my expectations, to the extent that even though I had no idea what a child companion position entailed, I had already agreed. After being unemployed for so long, I had repeatedly lowered the expected salary on my resume. $100,000 was almost equal to my expected annual salary. The child's crying grew louder through the receiver. The person apologetically said to me, "When is the earliest you could start? Chuan won't stop crying, and I really can't handle it." I glanced at the luggage by my feet and smiled wistfully. "I can start right now." I took a taxi to the address the boss gave me. When I arrived, I discovered that my employer was actually Xiaolan, Chu Yingzhe's fiancé. Chuan was just not fully recovered from his previous gas, so I helped him do the gas relief exercise again, and his crying gradually stopped. After I lulled Chuan to sleep, Xiaolan pointed to the first floor and told me to choose any room as my bedroom. Through brief communication, I roughly learned about the specific content of the child companion job. This is an emerging profession in recent years, which has gradually formed an industry chain trend in big cities. Simply put, parents are too busy with work and have no time to educate their children, so they find high-caliber talents to replace parents, accompanying the children while ensuring they don't fall behind at the starting line. Since its working method is somewhat similar to that of a nanny, requiring around-the-clock presence at the employer's home, few people are willing to work in this field. Moreover, since elite families have extremely high requirements for child companions, there are even fewer qualified candidates to choose from. This severe imbalance between supply and demand has created the high salaries in this field. A monthly salary of 100,000 yuan is just the average level. For the first time in my life, I'm extremely grateful that I studied hard. Summerlawn told me that in a few days we would be going to an island, and asked me to prepare Chuan's things in advance, as well as to prepare lessons promptly to see if I could teach Chuan some geography knowledge. After receiving the assignment, I immediately began preparing. While I was preparing lessons in the bedroom, my phone suddenly received a video call request from Han Haixue. I didn't think we needed to video chat right now, so I simply switched to voice call. Unexpectedly, after I switched to voice, Han Haixue directly hung up the phone. While I was wondering what she was up to, my phone suddenly vibrated once, and she sent me a video. I opened it to see her dressed in light clothing on an island, with a group of staff building a flower wall behind her. Her voice was full of pride and satisfaction. "Isn't this island beautiful? In a few days, I'll be having my wedding with Yingzhe here. I saw your message, and I agree to the divorce. You can send me the divorce agreement, and I'll sign it and send it back to you. I don't want anything from the house. Yingzhe says she'll buy me new things." She wanted to continue boasting, but I no longer had the patience to listen. I stopped caring about her and Bu Yingzhe long ago. Thanks to the rapid development of logistics, before departing, I received the divorce agreement Han Haixue had sent back. This took care of a major concern that had been weighing on my mind. The journey was surprisingly smooth. It was Chuan's first time on a plane, so I had prepared many relevant materials to share with him during the trip. Chuan listened attentively, occasionally asking adorably innocent questions. Even the typically boring journey passed quickly. However, after getting off the plane, I discovered my phone was filled with countless missed calls from Han Haixue. There were also messages from her demanding answers. "Did you change the password at home? What right do you have to change the password? What's the new password? Tell me quickly. Although I was puzzled about why she suddenly returned home while preparing for the wedding, that place was no longer her home. I sent her a message refusing, but unexpectedly, she called the next second. Just then, Xiaolan turned and instructed me. Find time today to buy a suit for Chuan Chuan. I'm getting married in a few days and want him to be the flower boy. Marriage? Xiaolan came to the island to get married? The wedding that Chu Yingxia prepared for Han Haixue was also on the island. He couldn't be planning to marry 2 wives at once, could he? That would certainly be efficient. Seeing that I didn't respond, Xiaolan asked me, "Is there a problem?" After some consideration, I pulled up the video that Han Haixue had sent me earlier and handed it to Xiaolan. "Can you see if this is the venue that will be used for your wedding?" She watched for several seconds, then nodded. "It does look similar. And is the groom Chu Yingxia?" I cautiously asked. She nodded again. After much hesitation, I finally decided to tell her about Chu Yingxia and Xiaolan's situation. Even though Xiaolan and I have already reached the point of divorce, if their affair is exposed later, I could still be implicated. I don't want to lose my job a second time because of her. Moreover, after so many days of interaction, Xiaolan has proven to be a good employer, and I can't bear to see her marry someone unworthy. Upon hearing my explanation, Xiaolan was only surprised for a moment before shrugging. "Then I'll just treat this as a vacation. I won't attend the wedding. A wedding without a bride will be quite a spectacle." After saying this, Xiaolan walked alone toward the scenic hotel, while I pushed the luggage closely behind her. Xiaolan was staying in the hotel's most expensive scenic suite, where the view was undoubtedly superb. In fact, it was so good that the wedding venue being urgently prepared was clearly visible. I immediately took out my phone, intending to contact the front desk to change rooms. However, Xiaolan raised her hand to stop me. "This angle is perfect for watching the show." I stood by the window, gazing at the wedding venue outside for a long time. The scenes from Han Haixue's video overlapped with what I saw outside the window. Her arrogant words and past behaviors repeatedly flashed through my mind. Although we had already separated, the hurt she caused me was difficult to erase. My phone screen lit up again with vulgar messages from Han Haixue. I don't know what Chu Yingxia said to trick her into going back, but the mighty CEO's wife couldn't even afford a hotel room and was making a fuss about wanting to go home. But where was home anymore? My fingertips turned white as I gripped my phone. Finally, the malicious thoughts buried deep in my heart took root and blossomed. I turned off my phone screen and turned to ask Xiaolan, "Ms. Xia, would you mind if we made this show even more interesting?" After much effort, I found Han Haixue's college best friend. I heard that since the Han family went bankrupt, they had lost contact. I paid off her friend and arranged for someone to pose as staff, saying that Feng Xinyan had prepared a surprise for Han Haixue. Xiaolan was quite interested in my scheme and even agreed to make a friendly appearance, actually wearing a wedding dress on the day of the wedding. Chu Yingxia thought his marriage to Xiaolan was a done deal. The wedding had invited almost all the prominent figures in the capital city, as well as several media outlets for live broadcast, all to showcase the Chu family's power. But when the wedding march began playing and he stood on the stage, his smile completely froze when he clearly saw the bride walking gracefully toward him. Xiaolan reclined in a lounge chair in the viewing room, using binoculars to watch Chu Yingxia's face turn pale and burst out laughing. She hadn't even had time to change out of her wedding dress, so eager was she to hurry back and watch the show. Previously, she had always been my stern boss. Now, I instead saw her childish side, which was somewhat endearing. My sleeve was suddenly tugged, and Grandma Chuanchuan's voice sounded in my ear. "Teacher Feng, why are you smiling at Mom?" I cleared my throat and diverted Chuanchuan's attention, pointing at the live broadcast of the wedding on the tablet. "Chuanchuan, do you know what instrument this is?" The child's attention was quickly diverted, and he grabbed my sleeve asking me to explain it to him. By the time I finished explaining to him and looked back at the wedding broadcast, it had already ended early. I quickly turned to look outside the window. Although I couldn't hear any sound from the scene before me, it wasn't hard to guess what had happened. The guests were standing up one after another, preparing to leave. Everyone who came was a prominent figure in the capital, with schedules planned down to the minute. They had specifically made time to attend the wedding of the Xia family's daughter, only to discover upon arrival that things were completely different than expected. Chu Yingxia went from table to table with apologetic smiles, but it was of no use. Meanwhile, Han Haixue stood to the side and angrily demanded an explanation from Chu Yingxia about what exactly was going on. Chu Yingxia found her annoying and actually slapped her across the face. Han Haixue was wearing very high heels, lost her balance, and fell straight to the ground. However, Chu Yingxia showed no intention of helping her up and just walked away. Han Haixue couldn't possibly give up like this. She rushed forward and grabbed Chu Yingxia's leg. From a distance, one could only see her mouth opening and closing, but couldn't hear what she was saying. I sighed lightly, feeling somewhat regretful. Such a good show, yet it was a silent play. Suddenly, a phone was handed to me, and on its screen was exactly that chaotic scene. Xiaolan stretched lazily and said, Plan B. I smiled knowingly, suddenly feeling that the woman in the wedding dress before me had a unique charm. But before I could grasp this fleeting thought, the exclamations coming from the phone caught my attention. Chu Yingzhe was actually kicking Han Haixue, who was now curled up on the ground, holding her head and rolling around. It wasn't until Han Haixue had no strength left and completely released her hands that were holding on to Chu Yingzhe's leg that he finally stopped and continued rushing toward the group of executives who were about to leave. He left without looking back. If he had turned around, he would have seen Han Haixue lying in a pool of blood. On the phone, Han Haixue was covering her stomach and helplessly crying out, My child, child. There were so many people at the scene, yet no one cared. Xiaolan withdrew her phone and walked toward the bedroom holding her wedding dress. The show was good. Thank you. Whether to save her or not is up to you. After saying that, she left with Chuan Chuan. I stared outside the window. The performance was over. Everyone was gone. The wedding that was full of distinguished guests moments ago now only had the bride left, lying in a pool of blood. I withdrew my gaze and dialed emergency services. From now on, we're even. Xiaolan suddenly had official business to attend to and had to end this island trip early. On the way, I received a call from the hospital. Hello, are you a family member of the patient? The patient is out of danger now. Could you please come and pay the medical fees? I replied coldly. I am not a family member. Hearing this, the doctor's tone became somewhat unpleasant. I mean, can't you men take some responsibility? She has you saved as husband in her phone. Your wife just had a miscarriage, and you won't even come see her. Is that appropriate? I took a deep breath and replied, I'm her ex-husband. The child is not mine. After saying this, I hung up the phone. I thought this would be the last connection between us, but unexpectedly, a week later, the hospital contacted me again. The hospital staff asked if I knew the contact information of her other family members. She had already accumulated over 3,000 yuan in unpaid medical bills, and if the fees weren't paid, the hospital would stop providing medication. I expressed that there was nothing I could do and hung up the phone. But surprisingly, as I looked up, I saw Chu Yingzhe at the entrance of the residential complex. Today is the weekend. Xiaolan finally found some free time and said she wanted to take Chuan Chuan to the zoo. But just after leaving home, she realized she had forgotten to bring the baby formula, so she asked me to deliver it. I was standing at the security booth waiting for Xiaolan's car to come up from the underground garage, but Chu Yingzhe mistook me for a security guard. Oh, you're still in Kyoto. I thought you couldn't make it here and had to hide in some other city. You're certainly adaptable, a talented scholar from Jing University, now working as a security guard. As he spoke, he actually patted my shoulder and arrogantly said, Look, let me in, and we'll put our past grievances behind us. I pushed his hand away. I'm sorry, I don't have that authority. Hearing this, his face turned cold, and he poked my chest with his finger. Feng Sinian, don't be so damn ungrateful. I have the power to prevent you from being a lawyer, and I also have the power to get you fired as a security guard. You'd better be sensible. While his threatening words continued, a car brushed past his body from behind. He was startled and turned to curse, but the window slowly lowered, revealing Xiaolan's face. The anger on his face instantly transformed into fawning flattery. Xiaolan, it's you. Your driving skills are impressive. Xiaolan ignored his comment and waved at me. I quickly stepped forward and handed her the baby formula. Chu Yingzhe was shocked at the sight. You're not a security guard? Xiaolan raised an eyebrow. We're living together now. Chu Yingzhe was speechless. How am I worse than him? Xiaolan's gaze scanned him up and down. You're worse in every way. After saying this, she suddenly beckoned me to get in the car. I was thinking, the zoo would be more fun with 3 people going together. In the rearview mirror, Chu Yingzhe stood there dumbfounded. As the car gradually left the residential complex, I thanked Xiaolan. Thank you for standing up for me. Xiaolan waved dismissively. Then I should thank you for blocking my admirer. We're even. Ever since that time when we watched the show together on the island, the distance between us seemed to have suddenly shortened. We were no longer in a superior-subordinate relationship, but rather more like friends. At the zoo, Summer looked at me in surprise as I demonstrated encyclopedic knowledge about various animals, asking, Are you a walking encyclopedia? I laughed and said, I just happened to prepare a lesson beforehand. I was planning to teach it after Chuan Chuan returned from the zoo, but now I can teach in person, which is even better. Summer nodded at me appreciatively. I certainly wasn't wrong about you. Having not received positive feedback for so long, I suddenly felt embarrassed when she praised me, so I simply avoided her gaze. Seeing my shyness, she became more interested and imitated Chuan Chuan's manner, asking in a cutesy voice, Teacher Feng, why do zebras wear black and white striped clothes? Looking down, I met her smiling eyes. This was hardly a CEO before me, but rather a girl who hadn't full. Oh, I grown up. Thinking about this, I ruffled Chuan Chuan's hair. Back then, When she decided to give birth to Chuan Chuan all by herself, she must have endured quite a lot of hardship. Time moved along methodically, and before we knew it, the day arrived for Chuan Chuan to get vaccinated. I took the vaccination record book and brought Chuan Chuan to the hospital. While paying the fee, I unexpectedly ran into Chu Yingzhe, who was walking out of the obstetrics department. I was about to ignore him, but he actively blocked my way. Unlike his previous arrogance, this time his tone and attitude were very mild. Haishue had a miscarriage and hurt herself. She's still hospitalized, having been transferred back from the island hospital a few days ago. Do you want to go see her? I firmly shook my head. No need. I was about to leave when he grabbed my wrist. I've heard that you're now helping Xia Lan take care of her child. Can you put in a few good words for me to her? I can pay you. Before I could open my mouth, Chuan Chuan in my arms was already waving his little fists. My mom pays teacher Feng 10,000 yuan a month. Are you as rich as my mom? 10,000. A sharp female voice joined our conversation. I turned to look and saw Han Haishue still wearing hospital clothes. I didn't want to be involved with them anymore, so I held Tun Chan and was about to leave, but Han Haishue grabbed my wrist. Xin Yin, let's make up. I turned my head and looked at her in disbelief. What made her think that, after doing so many things that hurt me, I would still forgive her? Seeing my silence, she raised her hand and swore to the heavens. Xin Yin, I will definitely treat our relationship right this time. As she spoke, she cast a venomous glance at Chu Yingzhe. I will never have anything to do with him again. Hearing this, Chu Yingzhe hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed my other hand. Yes, I have absolutely nothing to do with her anymore. You two should have a good life together. Just put in a good word for me with Xia Lan. I stared at the shameless faces of these two, suddenly stepped back, and shook off both their hands. I don't care anymore. The pediatric department had already called Chuan Chuan's name, but Chu Yingzhe was still blocking me, pleading desperately. I'm begging you, even if you won't speak up for me, can you at least share some information about Xia Lan's schedule? I'm truly out of options. Please help me. His hand gripping mine was trembling, his lips quivering as well, clearly showing he was genuinely at his wit's end. Rumors had it that because of that wedding, previous clients who had eagerly sought cooperation suddenly backed out overnight, and some investors even withdrew their funding in the middle of the night. Chu Corporation's capital chain was about to break. Even government agencies had come to investigate the company, and everyone at the company was now cooperating with the investigation. Judging by Chu Yingzhe's current appearance, the rumors weren't false. Once he had looked down on me from such heights, yet now he'd been reduced to begging me for help. Was it satisfying? Yes, quite satisfying indeed. But I would never reveal even the slightest detail about Xia Lan. Just as I was wondering how to get away from these two, suddenly police officers appeared before us. They were here to take Han Haishue away. Han Haishue reflexively said, I'm pregnant, but this is the obstetrics and gynecology department, and her child has long been gone. Chu Yingzhe had already hurriedly left the moment he saw the police. In an instant, the scene that had been so entangled just now left only me and Chuan Chuan. I instantly understood why it was impossible to contact Chu Yingzhe when Han Haishue was hospitalized on the island, yet now he had taken the initiative to visit Han Haishue. It was probably because the secret had been exposed, and he came to silence Han Haishue. Evidently, having escaped by luck back then had made Chu Yingzhe even more brazen, and Han Haishue was merely a pawn he had deceived in the name of love. His game had been laid out perfectly. Han Haishue, a pregnant woman, would take the blame for him. The Xia family's influence would help him negotiate, and I would be their nanny. But as fate would have it, that day I accidentally discovered him discussing marriage with Xia Lan, and he had no choice but to take the risk and remove me from the game prematurely. Yet unexpectedly, I, an originally insignificant pawn, ended up overturning the entire game. I watched as the elevator doors gradually closed, pulled back my thoughts, and squatted down to rub Chuan Chuan's head. Did Chuan Chuan see? That person just now was a police officer. What should you do if you encounter bad people in the future? Chuan Chuan answered in a childish voice, find the police. I nodded with satisfaction and took Chuan Chuan toward the pediatric department. During dinner, Xia Lan told me about Han Haishue and Chu Yingzhe's situation as if it were juicy gossip. She said, Han Haishue worked as an accountant at Chu Yingzhe's company, was caught falsifying accounts, and was taken away today. If she was still pregnant, she might have been able to serve her sentence outside prison, but now she has unfortunately miscarried, so it seems she won't be able to avoid imprisonment. A few days later, I heard the latest news at the dinner table again. Han Haishue confessed, and Chu Yingzhe has been arrested too. Xia Lan picked up the decanter to pour me some wine. Today is a good day, let's have a drink. Looking at her childish expression, I smiled and shook my head, but still clinked glasses with her. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed, and Chuan Chuan had reached the age to attend kindergarten. After much hesitation, I still submitted my resignation to Xia Lan. That evening, in Xia Lan's study, She pushed a men's ring toward me and said, "If you don't want to be a child companion anymore, would you consider the position of Chuan Chuan's dad?" I did have feelings for her, but I couldn't accept getting married under the current circumstances. I pushed the ring back and said, "We'll discuss this later." I had long been eyeing the huge market gap for child companions, and with my legal background and frequent dealings with government departments, establishing the company progressed rapidly. I had done market research early on and saved enough startup capital over 2 years, but I didn't expect an investor to come knocking on my door. On the first day our company opened, Xiaolan visited my office. She sat down in my boss chair without hesitation, took out a card from her bag, and said, "I want to invest." I was quite stunned by this sudden offer of money. She wanted to invest without even conducting an evaluation. She said she wasn't investing in the company, but in the person. I believed I had the ability not to let her investment go to waste, so I didn't refuse. With Summer Group's investment, I could operate more boldly without hesitation, and the company developed even faster. Within a year, almost all the wealthy families in the capital had hired childcare companions from my company. On the day we opened a branch office, I was holding Chuan Chuan as we cut the cake. Chuan Chuan found the ring on top of the cake and asked softly, "Teacher Foam, do you want to be my dad?" In front of everyone, I knelt on one knee before Summer Lawn and asked, "Would you like that?" Summer Lawn extended her hand proudly. "I suppose I could manage that." Amid cheers from everyone, Summer Lawn and I embraced.